Hello, I'm Manuela Silva and I'm a research associate at Voxa Labs UFPE, and I'm going to present you today my work called Exploring the Possibilities of Extended Reality as a Learning Tool. So in this presentation, I want to share with you a little bit more about augmented reality potential in education. I've been working with augmented reality, which is a type of extended reality learning tool. And during both my master and my PhD, I have been able to work with lots of teachers and students, and as well as researchers, and we can see that they all acknowledge the interesting potential of augmented reality in education. So for example, here we can see this tool called Merge EDU, which is this cube where we can project different types of content, and this example highlights particular characteristics of affordances of augmented reality that are interesting for education. For example, the ability to provide a visualization of content, and also the possibility of interact with this content in different ways, maybe using the whole body, which is all very interesting. And this is all due to the physicality, right? The possibility of really manipulating using your senses to see and interact with content. It's also interesting the potential AR has to provide context for different types of content. So for example, if you're thinking about language learning, where it's really important for students to have the context of what they're learning, it would be a really interesting affordance to harness in the learning process. We can see here in this example this tool called Quiver, which is an application that allows us to color different types of pictures, and then we can see the pictures we colored in 3D using the colors we use in our drawing. Two other interesting affordances of augmented reality are related to reduced abstraction, which is very interesting for contents that have this abstract layer. So for example, in this system by Radu, we can see this platform that allows us to assemble a radio, and then through the use of augmented reality, learners can really understand why the system works or why it doesn't work, and they can also be guided and instructed on how to assemble the system and make it actually work. We also have a couple of interesting augmented reality authoring tools. For example, CoSpaces EDU is a tool that's very interesting, and it's specifically designed for education, as we can see here in the picture, and it's also available to download using the QR code. So this platform allows us to create like virtual worlds, and we can experience them both in virtual reality through the use of headsets, and also through augmented reality using the cubes, such as a Merge Cube I've shown you before. We also have Metaverse, which is this tool that allows us to create games such as scavenger hunts or maybe breakouts, where you can use the physical space as part of the experience, and we can place different kinds of virtual clues or hints, and learners can use the cell phone to find these clues and hints and play the game. We also have Zap AR, which is another platform that allows us to associate virtual content to printed material, so it can be like folders or posters, any other printed material you would like. And based on this scene we have, right? We have lots of augmented reality tools available. We also have a couple of authoring tools, and even then we don't see a lot of augmented reality in schools. So this question motivated part of my research, and we conducted an online instructor survey with 106 participants from a broad cross-section of teachers across different teaching levels and subjects, and the goal was to understand the constraints blocking AR used in the classrooms. So it was really interesting to discover the main barriers, right, teachers face when they attempt to bring this technology to education. And the major barriers were authoring tools that were sometimes not very suitable for their purposes, the lack of infrastructure, school support, and time. From these main constraints, we decided to focus on augmented authoring tools, because the other constraints were more related to policies and would take a lot of time and costs to address, which were not in the scope of my PhD. We also conducted a couple of interviews with 7 teachers and 2 coordinators in order to discover how teachers actually use the AR technology available. Again, as this was part of this exploratory phase of the study, we had a broad cross-section of participants from different teaching levels and subjects, and the goal were understand teachers' planning and selection process, as well as characterize teachers' experiences using AR. Based on the findings, we could create a couple of personas of the teachers and understand a little bit better about what they were going through while using AR, and also to help us empathize with them. So what we discover is that teachers usually understand that augmented reality is not very suitable for more traditional methods. So for example, where a teacher will speak and students will only listen to the content. So they usually use AR in small groups of students, or maybe exploring the space around them. They also missed other types of assessments. So, for example, they mentioned that sometimes they did interesting activities with augmented reality, but then they had to do the written test, which was not very coherent with what they were doing with students. They also mentioned a couple of difficulties in use, such as cognitive load, usability and infrastructure. They expressed the desire to create content with students as well. So these were the most pressing issues raised during this research. And then again, we created these personas to help us understand better these teachers. We created also some storyboards to help us understand what they were living through. In this example, we have a storyboard of a teacher AR use. We have this biology teacher called Luciana. She searched for tools to teach about anatomy. She found one that would help students to visualize the heart in 3D and interact with it. She brought it to the classroom, but then she realized that for the next unit, she wouldn't be able to use the same tool because it didn't support what she needed to do. So later, she might find out about a different tool, such as Aurasma, that's currently not available, and then she would bring this tool to the classroom and ask students to create content and make a presentation. Students might have some problems with it, and she would help them to solve the problem, but then in the presentation she might face some infrastructure issues, which would leave her a bit frustrated with the process. So based on this process, we created this AR usage map. In this usage map, we show the flow of the experience of teachers. So for example, we have the plan of AR experience where the teacher will define the marker, where it will be placed, what kinds of contents they would need. So if images, videos, 3D elements or 3D videos or audio, they would also curate or create AR content, which is a very interesting thing teachers pointed out to us, because they would like to curate content, right? They would like to have some content available where they could select and use it in the classroom. They would try these AR experiences and then assess learning and also evaluate the experience and receive the feedback to facilitate the curation, creation, and the planning of new AR experiences. So, in order to find out the features to enable educational AR use, we ran a couple of ideation sessions with teachers, designers, and engineers. So it was a very multidisciplinary group. We had 2 user-centered ideation sessions. These sessions aim to answer the question, how might we design a learning sequence using AR to help students understand ELA concepts in small groups? So ELA stands for English, Language and Arts. This was the topic that was chosen because of the availability of teachers and also the kinds of experiences they could create using AR for this purpose, and small groups because, as I said before, it's usually how they use AR in education. We also had a decision session after this session, so we had a couple of ideas for prototypes, and then we decided on which one would be more appropriate to follow, and then after the decision, we had another one to develop the sketch of the solution. Here you can see a couple of pictures of the sessions. Again, we had this multidisciplinary team participating. These sessions happened in Brazil and in the US because I did my PhD sandwich at Harvard Graduate School of Education. So it was very interesting because we also had a very multicultural group of participants in all the steps of the research. So after these sessions, we found out the problems to be tackled. The most important problems were student dependence of the teacher and lack of understanding. We also decided that we need an AR application to be the base for the AR authoring tool. And the main needs were the co-creation of augmented narratives to develop language learning, group work and collaboration among students, the importance of sharing activities and having a content library, and also the teachers expressed their interest in content curation. So here we have the sketch of the tool chosen to be developed. It's called Virtual Playground, and it basically allows users to create collaborative storytelling. So they can access it and they can create together these narratives and therefore practice English language and arts. We have the evaluation and testing of these tools. These occurred in 2 cycles. The first one, we had this paper and also the wireframes as prototypes. So in the left, you can see the wireframes with the teacher's point of view. This was created using Figma, and in the right, you can see the paper prototype of the application teachers also interact with during this session. We had these sessions with 5 teachers, which was the minimum number required by Nielsen to identify usability issues. So they all experienced these prototypes. They also participated in a couple of interviews to understand their point of views. And the main findings were, first, the validation of the concept. Also, we had a couple of suggestions for improvement in the instructions of the interface. They also highlighted the need for content monitoring and moderation and the need to offer some analytics. Based on this feedback, we improved the prototype and we had like a better version of it, this time running on Android. And then we had also a couple of changes. We have this big marker that would function as a scenario for the story, and then we have these smaller markers that we could use as characters and interact with it in the scene. Again, this was tested with 5 teachers. Some of them participated in different stages of the research. Some of them were different ones, and these teachers they tested these 2 prototypes. In the left you can see the point of view of the teacher, and on the right we can see the point of view of the student. Here again are some pictures. These tests were conducted online due to the pandemic. Teachers had to download the tool, use it, and then they recorded this use and sent it to us. They also were requested to design a didactic sequence with the tool so we could see how they would apply it in their real classroom. Based on these findings, we came up with 3 categories of design principles, which were divided in infrastructure, augmented reality, and pedagogical, and we had 11 design principles in total based on the entire experience that would help the development of AR authoring tools in education. The first principle has to do with the importance of offering an offline version. So this is important because some schools lack internet infrastructure. Of course, it's important to consider different contexts. So especially during the pandemic, we had this particular situation in which some teachers would have access to the internet, but they would not normally have it. So it's important to consider this. And as this teacher pointed out, so this is very good because it gives accessibility to people who don't have internet. So it's also a matter of accessibility to have this option of an offline version of a tool. In this example here, we have Zapworks, and we can see that this tool provides us with an offline version for authoring, and this is a desktop version. It's important to highlight that the teachers also sometimes might need to have this option, a mobile version. That's why we have the principle number 2, because these devices are currently massively available, both for students and for teachers. So some teachers also mention that they need to plan during transport, for example, on the bus or on the train or whatever. So it's interesting for them to have this option to work on mobile phones. Of course, with technology evolution, we might see that these may change in the future, but right now, this is what is massively available. In this quote here, we can see the teacher saying that the school especially encourages the use of mobile learning from the perspective of bringing your own device. So it's important to keep that in mind. We have the CoSpaces EDU, which allows for this function. The principle number 3 states the importance of providing an instructional interface, as poor instructions can limit learning. So this teacher points out that the success of an activity depends on the quality of instruction given. So this is very important to have these instructions both for students but also for teachers, because teachers are sometimes learners as well. They are learning how to use AR and they are learning how to use it pedagogically. So it's important for us to provide this instructional interface that will ensure teachers can make the most of it. In this example here, we have a couple of instructions. As we can see in our prototype Visual Playground Creator, we also have a couple of instructions helping teachers to design experiences for students. So this is an important characteristic to have in mind. Another principle related to infrastructure states the importance of providing support for teachers. So in our study, we found out that lack of support is a barrier for technology adoption, especially AR. Of course, this principle can also be taught in the sense of different levels. So we can see that some teachers might need a lot of support, some teachers might need medium support, or some might need low support. As this teacher points out, there are some teachers who do not have much knowledge of digital and augmented reality. So it's important to keep that in mind so the tool can be as accessible as possible. So for example, in the CoSpaces EDU, we have a couple of lesson plans available for teachers where they can see, they can have some inspiration, they can adapt it to their reality. And this support can be done in a couple of different ways. Maybe lesson plans, maybe video tutorials, but any kind of support would be really welcomed by teachers. Another principle now relating to augmented reality is the importance of offering content library. So teachers may not be able to create content themselves, although some of them will really want and like to do it. It may not be possible, right, due to their workload or maybe lack of technical knowledge. So as the teacher points out here, she says, as a teacher, I will not necessarily be able to create from scratch a 3D character, isn't that? So even though they might not be able to create content, they may need some customization. So it's important to offer some content library. So again, CoSpaces EDU is very interesting because it offers a very good content library with a couple of characters and objects that can be used. Again, principle number 6 related to augmented reality states for the sharing of AR experiences. This is a very interesting point because it provides the students with an authentic audience for their learning. So this teacher here points out that I think the students, it's the part they like the most when they do it. It means when they share AR experiences. They want to show it, they want to share it. So it also empowers students and gives them this sense of a pride and accomplishment and also responsibility to what they are sharing with others. In the Lens Studio, we have this option to share their projects. So again, it's very important to think about this. Another principle related to augmented reality is the possibility of content curation. As I said, this is important so teachers can collaborate with peers and also reduce their workload, which is an important issue and barrier for them adopting new technologies. So this teacher here points out that it's important for me to be able to look for activities created by other teachers. Here in the CoSpaces EDU, we have this option. So for example, we have a couple of experiences there, they're shared and teachers can see and interact with it. Principle number 8 states for the offer of analytics. This is related to the pedagogical part and it aids teachers in the assessment process. And also it helps to customize feedback for learners. So for example, here in this quote, we can see that the teacher mentions that when you see the statistics, the analytics, you can see where you can improve in your instructions or in the choice of materials and such. So having these analytics is an important part of evaluation and assessment because it helps teachers to improve their practices. So it is very important to have this. We didn't find tools that actually attended this principle, but this tool called Augment attended partially. So for example, with this tool, we can see who used AR and for how long. But as teachers mentioned, we need to have also more qualitative data, not just quantitative, but qualitative to understand what students are doing and how effective is the experience itself. Principle number 9 states for the co-creation of experiences, as this process gives more responsibility to learners and they feel more empowered and responsible for their learning and content creation. So this is very important, especially if we look at the maturity models for technology use. Usually the higher levels of maturity are correlated with students feeling more empowered, or in other words, more student-centered practices. So this teacher here, she points out that she sees the biggest leaps on the students when they have the responsibility to create something because it's also theirs. So it's really interesting to think about this and to think about how to design AR tools that enable teachers to do that. For example, here in the CoSpaces EDU, we have the possibility of monitoring what the students can see. The teacher can monitor students, but they cannot co-create together. So this is very important, as mentioned by the teachers in the research. Principle number 10 states for the classroom management, which is a really important issue for teachers, and it includes monitoring students without compromising autonomy. So it's important to think about that this also might vary depending on the context. For example, with more younger learners, we tend to need more monitoring, and with older learners, this need might be decreased, but it's important to have some degree of monitoring and making sure students are on task, are on focus, and are secure doing so. So this is an important point, and also it relates to the integration of AR experience to the classroom. We are not proposing an augmented reality classroom, but we are proposing AR experiences that are seamlessly connected to the classroom and to the learning objectives. So this teacher here, she has this quote that is very interesting, and she says, "We don't want creative control. We want students to create freely, but security control has to be as much as possible." So in this example, we have the CoSpaces EDU, which allows teachers to have classes, assign assignments, add students, add teachers. We also have similar possibilities in the visual playground. Teachers can have their classes, and also another interesting feature in Visual Playground Creator is that students can share their work only after the teacher pre-approve it. So the teacher might be able to see and discuss before the students can go and share it. So it is also an interesting feature depending, of course, on the context. Finally, principle number 11, which is also pedagogical, relates to assessment flexibility. As said before, it enables teachers to decide appropriate ways to evaluate their students, and it helps them to create more coherent assessments. So, for example, these teachers suggest the use of rubrics. We can also think about a more multimodal analytics, as we have more robust systems where we can use other types of data, such as where students look and things like that. We didn't find any application that would do this, but we have this example here as an illustration. For example, the use of rubrics from the Open University. But this is very interesting for teachers because, as I said, it's part of their whole process of using AR, and it's also where they can see the learning happening, right? Where they can get the evidence that learning happened with their students and through this AR experience. Here, finally, we have a couple of references you can use and check, and this is where you can find me. I would be happy to talk to you later about these topics. And again, thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm really happy to participate in the conference. Thank you.